Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with another Caldera Intel series video, and today we are breaking down Village. Now, Village sits just above Lagoon and just below Ruins, and honestly, I think it's one of my favorite drops in the game if you're not able to drop Peak because of the line of the plane or otherwise. Maybe you're trying to play a touch slower, but Village, I think, is extremely underrated, and I'm going to tell you why. As a reminder, this whole series, we're breaking down every major POI on the brand new Caldera map for Warzone Pacific. We just talked about Ruins, which is just above it, right over here. Go check out that video after this one. Now let's jump straight into it. All right, so I gotta talk about my least favorite spot in Village first. And as a reminder, as we talked about in the Ruins video, I delineate Village to a lot smaller of a location than the overarching Village that is shown on the overall map with the big regions you've probably seen with the yellow lines. It's just much too large for what Village actually is. But one thing that is still included in my delineation is the back of Village. There's this massive shipwreck that you're seeing on screen right here. And to be honest, this is so cool. Like, what I love about Caldera is that they've added in so many areas like this. I talk about another one in the Lagoon video that is next, but this is just a really cool spot on the map. It is reminiscent to the crashed boat that kind of came in towards the end of Verdansk. A little bit smaller than that, but a little bit more intricately designed, in my opinion. I mean, you've got vines hanging down and all kinds of cool stuff. But look, I could marvel at it all day. I'm going to be totally frank with you guys. Don't drop here. This is terrible. There's nothing here. I had terrible loot here. And even if you're lucky enough to have decent loot, you're so far removed from the rest of the map. It really depends on what your goals are for dropping in Village. If you're trying to kind of keep it a casual drop and slowly work your way through the map or even explore, sure, go here. Otherwise, especially for decently high kill games, it takes you so long to rotate out this boat area. And as people are fighting inside a Village, you're not going to get in on any of the action. So sure, go loot up here, find some cool stuff, but don't drop here. Hey, really quick, if you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, that would mean the world. I can't do this without your support, and algorithmically, it kills. Just comment, share with a friend, all that good stuff. All right, let's jump right back into it. All right, so now I am able to drop into Village kind of uncontested. I flew from very far away just to kind of showcase what it looks like from a general perspective, as well as talk about my favorite drop spot and my favorite rotation. So as we come flying into Village, you can notice that the Village proper, or the primary part of Village I was talking about, is kind of encased in this river that flows down and then into the sea. You can see all of this like Malaysian style Pacific, obviously, buildings with, you know, thatched roofs and sewn, you know, woven together walls with like bamboo and things like that. Really cool design. Again, going back to the design comments I made earlier, I love the way this area looks. And there's actually a good quality amount of loot here. I mean, I have found basically a box or a good set worth of guns and, you know, money and all of that good stuff in just about every single building in this area. What's cool about this area too, and one of the reasons I like it so much, is because every single gunfight feels very unique and fresh. You have to really think on your feet in this area because there's so much outplay potential, which I talk about on just almost every POI, depending on where you're at. Ruins, you kind of have to hold sight lines and you can outplay with the rocks and the small structures. But here, with this many buildings and this many ways to jump from building to building even, it is really fun to fight in. It can get frustrating maybe if you're not the most skilled player. So I would say this is more on the skilled drop locations comparatively. If you're somebody that's not insane with movement or amazing with gunplay, and you're just trying to get the best weapon possible and hold sight lines, this probably isn't the place for you because you can get shot from just about every single building in this area. Now, my favorite drop that I showed here on this walkthrough is I actually really like dropping those elongated buildings, especially in quads. The reason for that is this: there's almost always loot in there. There's almost always really solid guns in there. And even if I get a little unlucky, I pick up like an MP40 and it's, you know, a gray MP40 or something like that, I can still take fights in this elongated building. There's not a ton of cover, but there are windows that you can jump out of and you can utilize the door, but there's not some insane amount of like jump spots or anything like that around this building, which makes for fairly easy combat when you're first dropping in. And you could send all 4 of your teammates on those elongated sort of diamond shaped buildings, all land together, all grab guns, and all move as a unit, which is honestly probably what I suggest unless you're a high skilled team. Of course, if you're a high skilled team, you could separate into twos, and as long as you can see each other's buildings, if somebody starts getting shot, even with how fast the TTK is in this game, you can move together as a unit and avoid fights. You get shot a couple times, there's so much cover in this area. Unless you're completely caught off guard, you can probably jump behind or into one of the buildings and be okay. Again, as you go out into the backside of Village, it gets a little bit more, I guess, less congested with buildings, and it's a lot more terrain to work with, but not a ton of cover. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest rotating over towards Ruins. If anything, like we talked about in the Ruins video, you come out of Ruins and go to Village. I would not recommend going from Village into Ruins, although I do catch a team rotating here as I'm showing the perspective and even get the kills in a moment. Also, use stims. Just a little side note, stims, you can do some insane things with stims. With the mobility of them, it can catch your enemies off guard, and this guy was so lost. When it comes to my favorite rotation through Village, again, I like landing those 2 diamond buildings. There's one kind of dead center right underneath the nameplate of Village on the mini map, as well as another one up a little bit further north. And I tend to land on the one further north if the line directly travels over Village. If it is going to be a hot air drop, like the plane is flying over Village or really close nearby, I like landing a little bit further north where I'm not immediately into the mix of things, so I can grab guns and then assess the fight. Again, not always my strategy when I take drops, but in Village in particular, you want to make sure you have good solid ground loot to take these fights, because it's not immediate kills like you do see in a lot of other POIs with big long open sight lines. Like we mentioned before, outplay potential, all that good stuff. There's just a lot of cover and a lot of buildings, so you got to be sure of your shots, which is where those gold automatons and some of those low recoil weapons can really come in handy in these early fights in Village. So again, a little bit hotter, I land the northern diamond building. If it's medium, if there's a couple teams dropping here but it's not crazy hot, I land dead center of Village because I like to be in that action. You can drop a little bit further south if you want to slow it down a little bit but still be in the mix of the large conglomerate or congestion of buildings in the center of Village, and then rotate through. Now, from the diamond building, I like to jump straight across the river, that sort of stream that cuts down into this sort of peninsula area. You can see the diamond building that I marked is in the center of the 2 streams that pass over it, like forks around it. And I actually like to jump over to the north side of that diamond first, clear those 4 buildings just above it, and then peek down and address the fights that were maybe to my south before I leave Village. So in terms of rotating out of Village, after you've cleared everything around you, you've got the gas at your back, or maybe you're trying to leave early and you just want to get to somewhere else. Maybe you lost some of your teammates and you need to regain them and there's not a buy station in Village. My favorite rotation is actually the exact same rotation we did for Ruins. After you clear Village, and even in this video I showed you, I cleared Ruins first. I peeked over at Ruins. When I leave Village, I always leave Village to the northern side of Village, touching those rock faces that kind of separate Ruins and Village. The reason for this is very obvious. There is wide open spaces to your right, way down to the south side of the map. You don't want to rotate that way. You're going to be wide out in the open. It is much safer to kind of hug these rock surfaces to your left, then cross the street, if you will, up towards that Phosphate Mining group buildings that I had mentioned before. This is this small building that you're seeing on the mini map now that has a big mine structure, and there's a ton of loot here and almost always a buy station. Your only open area that you have to run is this initial spot that you're seeing right now. And if you do have a car, it makes a very quick rotation. I'm talking, 8 seconds or so to get back into cover. And that's one of the major things you've got to be careful with on Caldera, is crossing wide out in the open, especially because there's a lot of that on this map. Although it doesn't seem like it because of the verticality and because of the trees, the sightlines on this map are massive if you're in specific areas. So once you get to the Phosphate Mining group area, I'm just deciding that from now on, I'm calling this building Phosphate, or this structure Phosphate. It seems for the best cause. So if I ever mention Phosphate again when I'm talking about other rotations, you know where I'm talking about. It's this small area between all the roads, between the mines, and between Ruins and Village, okay? So go here and then rotate from here on out. Just totally depends on your circle. I always say the center is the best spot to be in terms of getting a lot of kills. Peak will be always active throughout the entirety of the game, most active during early game and during late game. Hopefully this helps. Hopefully you enjoy the Village drop as much as I do. If I missed something with Village that you really enjoy, drop it down in the comments below. I always want to learn more, as well as I'm able to educate you guys on my favorite spots around Caldera. Hey, we got a lot more POIs coming. Please tune into the channel, subscribe, like the video, all that good stuff. Share it with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one.